Hello, everybody, and welcome to ISTA 2020. My name is Nikolay Nikolov, and today we'll be talking about Cypress together. The conference this year is kind of different, but hopefully we'll make the most of it. As I said, we'll be talking about testing with Cypress. Cypress is one of the new kids on the block when it comes to end-to-end testing with JavaScript, and we'll be digging into that today. Me, as a web developer, I'll be giving you my perspective on the technology with its strong suits and its drawbacks. As I said, my name is Nikolay Nikolov. I'm a software developer at Accedia, a company based here in Sofia, Bulgaria. And throughout the years, I've been fortunate enough to be included in all sorts of different projects with different setups. And I've used Cypress in a number of those, since I find the technology pretty helpful, and the technology is really bringing a lot of value for a relatively short period of time, especially when it comes to end-to-end testing. Speaking of testing, we of course have to mention the infamous pyramid, otherwise this won't be a testing talk. So we have the basic separation of unit, integration, and end-to-end tests, and the complexity of those scales from the unit to end-to-end ones. And naturally, unit test only tests something in isolation, so a unit of code. Integration tests tend to test more stuff at once, and end-to-end ones cover whole application user flows. And that in itself leads to unit tests being the fastest to run, execute, deliver everything, and the end-to-end ones are notorious for being kind of harder to deliver, execute, and maintain later on. And basically, that makes the end-to-end ones the most expensive, of course. But I've been in situations where we would have hundreds of unit tests, but we would have critical bugs in production. Just because unit tests are not covering our whole application. Unit tests are covering only parts of it, and in order just to be sure and have strong confidence in our application, we just need end-to-end coverage. With that being said, here comes Cypress. Cypress is the modern JavaScript testing experience. They like to call themselves an experience. Cypress has been out of beta for a few years now, and it has been rising in popularity ever since its original release. Currently, it has about 25,000 GitHub stars. I have to say that Cypress has one of the best sets of documentations around the block, with a lot of custom examples and a lot of insights, which makes the technology really developer and QA friendly. Cypress is free and open sourced. Its source code is in GitHub, and they are known to be passionate about delivering something that the community really wants, and they are all about the community feedback. Last but not least, Cypress has nothing to do with Selenium. Actually, let's touch on that. Cypress is something different. In order to see why that is, let's run a quick comparison. Selenium has been the de facto standard testing tool for end-to-end stuff for more than a decade now. Selenium executes remote commands through the network, and that's how it tests the actual application. So we have the Selenium part, and then through a proprietary protocol, we are issuing remote commands, and we are, in a sense, poking our web application, asking it to do stuff, and asking for its current state. But the architecture of Selenium makes it asynchronous in nature, just because Selenium can never have the true native access to the current state of our application. It kind of has to go through the wire. That leads to flakiness, and that leads to a lot of seemingly random test failures in production or in staging. And a lot of developers are required to add a lot of weights and kind of custom codes constructs just to fight that flakiness. On the other hand, we have Cypress. Cypress, you can imagine Cypress as being just another JavaScript module which is running right next to your application. It is actually pretty much that. Cypress, both the test execution stuff and the tests themselves are written in JavaScript. So it's actually running right next to the application in the very same run loop. Having the code running in the actual browser right next to the application provides Cypress with synchronous access to your application state, basically the DOM, all sorts of JavaScript state, stuff like that, which makes the whole process way less flaky when compared to Selenium, just because the architecture of Cypress is fundamentally different in that regard. And that has been the intent from day one. The creator of the library actually started developing it with that in mind. Enough talking, let's go through the quick installation. Basically, as far as the installation is concerned, once again, Selenium has been notorious for having a difficult initial setup, just because you need a lot of extra stuff. With Cypress, you don't have that. The only thing that we need to run in order to have Cypress installed is npm install Cypress, and we'll save it as a dependency. We are presented with two things after installing Cypress. We have a UI part and a CLI part. The UI part is actually a native desktop application written in Electron with a pretty pleasant UI, which leads to interactive testing. And we have the CLI, which is used for continuous integration. We'll be looking at both of those later on. And I guess now it's time to see the actual basic API and write our first test. In order to start that desktop application, we need to run npx Cypress open, basically the open command on top of Cypress. Let's do that. Actually, I have prepared a small playground application, and I have started Cypress beforehand. Here we have the desktop application already running. But let's see what Cypress gives us after it has been installed. We have the Cypress folder, and inside of it, we have the integration folder. This folder holds all the tests that we have. First of all, we have the examples folder. And once again, the people in Cypress have been kind enough to provide us with a lot of descriptive examples. Then we have our custom tests, which we'll be looking at today. With that being said, let's jump to the actual Windows application, desktop application. We have all the tests outlined in here with all the examples and our custom ista.spec.js. And we can choose which browser to use for the test execution. Currently, I have those three installed on this machine, and I'll choose to use Chrome. I run the test simply by clicking on it. And after doing that, I'm presented with a sandboxed custom environment, which is actually running my tests for me. It is just like an incognito Windows in Chrome in this case. With that being said, we can actually kind of see the UI of the Cypress executable. We are presented with a UI divided in two parts. The left one holds the information about our tests, and actually in real time we can see what is happening. We see the number of failing or of passing, failing tests, how long have been the tests running for, and in the right hand side we can actually see a live preview of the application that we are currently testing. You can see that currently we're testing the ISTA conference website, and we are all sorts of stuff on top of it, and we can see it going live both in the left and the right hand side. But in here we notice that we have a failing test. Let's get back to it. In order to divide our tests, we have the familiar to some of you described in 8 blocks. Just because Cypress, as I mentioned, it's more of a testing experience. They kind of bundle everything that you need. You don't need to include anything else. This is our first test, and it is as basic as it gets. We are expecting false not to be true, and we're doing 2 basic assertions. The second one is a bit more interesting. We start using the CY global object that Cypress is providing us. We can use the visit method on top of it, and we can visit a given URL. Then we can tweak the viewport, make it 1000 by 1000. We can wait for 3 seconds in this case, and then we can change the viewport to something like the iPhone 5s. Let's actually see those 2 tests. The first one is pretty basic. It just succeeded those 3 expectations. And then we have the second one. The second one actually visited the website, changed the viewport, waited for 3 seconds, and changed it again. But notice how I'm hovering on the left-hand side, and stuff in the preview is changing dynamically. It is pretty helpful when it comes to testing and especially debugging in order for the developer to be able to do that, time traveling. But let's see why our third test is failing. The third test, actually, let's go back to the code. Let me collapse the first 2 and make sure that only the third test is running by chaining the .only. I have just saved, and I can see that Cypress has picked up the change and is going at it. It is currently running only that third test. We are visiting the ISTA conference website. We can see it going live. And the get command is currently trying for a while to get an element, but it timed out retrying, expected to find this element, but never did. You saw one of the core constructs of Cypress in action. For a lot of the stuff that Cypress does, for example, that querying that element, if it doesn't find that element immediately, it retries that for a period of time, in this case 4 seconds, that is configurable of course, until either the timeout is elapsed, or if the element actually shows up. This leads to way less flaky tests, and this takes care of the undeterministic nature of the web, just by doing that intelligent retrying. But actually, we are trying to find some sort of a mocked element. But I'm in Chrome. I can simply open my DevTools, because I'm in Chrome after all, and I can try to inspect my button and actually see that the class I'm looking for is mobile-menu-button, not mobile-menu-button-mock. So in order to fix my test, I need to return that mock. And let me actually introduce the cy.pause command. After visiting the site, I'm issuing the cy.pause command. Going back, I'm currently visiting the website, and I'm in the paused state right now, which means that Cypress has stopped the execution, and I can manually go through the steps one by one. This time I found my element, I clicked on it, and so on and so forth. Or I can simply click the resume button, and I'll be going through the whole test. Another part of the time traveling is, here we can see that when I get some elements and when I click on them, I can actually see everything going live in the right-hand side. Even if I, for example, pin one of the commands by clicking on it, I have the before and after snapshots. Basically, before clicking on the home link, indicated by this click target, the red dot, and after clicking on it. What is more, if I open my DevTools, I'll be presented in the console with information about the command that I have pinned. It's a click command on top of this element with that set of coordinates and so on. Pretty helpful stuff. I can unpin it, and then I can go through my tests. Actually, for the sake of it, let's run through the test. I'm getting the first navigation link. I'm clicking on it, and I expect the URL to include the word home. Then I'm going back, and then I expect the path not to include home because I went back. And the test is already succeeding. All right. With that being said, let's go back to the presentation, and let's spend a minute talking about a few of the game changers when it comes to Cypress. First of all, we have interactive time traveling, as I showed you. We can literally go back in time and see what has been happening. We have direct debugging because we are simply in Chrome. We have hot reloading. As soon as I change a file and save it, I have the test being automatically run again for me. And I have the intelligent waiting system, which makes sure that the flakiness, the overall flakiness of my test goes down because I'm not depending on some exact values. All of that leads to impeccable consistency overall for the Cypress executable. Actually, let's go back into the demo and spend some time on it as well. This was the first test. Let's now focus on the second one. I'll be doing that by chaining the dot only on my second one. I'll just hit save, and we can see that Cypress is doing its thing behind the scenes. But actually, let's run through the code real quick. We have hooks like the before each one, which makes sure to visit the to-do MVC, the infamous to-do MVC application, before each of my tests. Of course, this is usually localhost, but just for this playground, I have wired it up with an actual deployed website. The first test is pretty self-explanatory. I'm getting the heading, I'm making sure that it's visible, and it contains the word to-dos, and I want it to be centrally aligned when it comes to text alignment. As I saw, I'm pretty much reading it out loud in English. The API is pretty English-like, and it's pretty cool in that regard. The second test, let's actually see what has been going on. Cypress run 4 tests and everything is good. The first one, it grabbed the heading, it expected it to be visible and to have the correct CSS, and it does. The second one, you can add and delete to-dos. What we have done is we have grabbed the input box, we have typed the first keyword, the first to-do. We have actually, how do we press enter? In Cypress, in order to press enter, we just type the special enter key without needing some sort of weird key codes and stuff like that. We have added the second and the third to-dos. Actually, if I click on any of those commands, once again, I have the before and after snapshot, before adding the second and after adding the second. Pretty helpful. Then I want the to-do count in here on the right to have the text three items left, which it does. I make sure that I actually have 3 list items. I destroy the 3 list items, and I make sure that the list is empty. Actually, how do I destroy them? If you notice in here, I have to hover in order to be able to click on the X. But Cypress can even issue forced commands by giving it the force command, the force flag of 2 to the click command, and by doing that, we can actually click hidden elements. 2 more tests. We have 2 more of those in this suite. We can filter to-dos, which is pretty much adding 3 to-dos. Let's actually see it in here. We add the first, the second, and the third to-do. Then we toggle the first one, as you can see. Then we click on the completed filter. We have the before and after snapshots being toggled there. And we expect to have 1 list item, which we do, because we have just the 1 completed list item. And last but not least, let's see the last test that we currently have. We are once again adding 3 to-dos, and we are editing one by issuing the special double-click command, because just the website expects us to double-click in order to edit. But do you notice a pattern here? We are adding those 3 to-dos in each of the tests. Cypress can help us with that, and if we go to the support folder, I have registered a custom command called add to-dos, which is doing that for us, basically adding the 3 to-dos. And now we can just get rid of that repetitive piece of code and just add the to-dos programmatically like that. And we can run our tests as usual. And they have been picked up, and in a second here, you can see the interactive typing and adding, removing to-dos in real time, which is pretty cool. And yeah, we have 4 tests passing. Nice. A few words about the folder structure of Cypress. We have, once we install Cypress, as I mentioned, we have the Cypress folder. Inside of it, we have 4 folders. One of them is fixtures, which holds JSON files, which are used for basically whatever we need, be it assertions, mocking APIs, stuff like that. We have the integration folder, which actually holds the test code that we have. We have the plugins folder. Inside of the plugins folder, we can register special tasks such as cleaning the database, making sure that we can have seeded some sort of data before our tests. And we have the support folder, which holds custom commands, such as the add to-dos one that we just saw. But what about continuous integration? In 95% of the testing, we are running our tests in continuous integration environment. Cypress has us covered as well. We just need to substitute the open command for the run one. And I have run that command in my other window in here before we started. And we can see a drill down of the tests. We have 6 passing, 1 failing, 1, and we have some sort of details about the execution. Something more, in the screenshots folder, we even have a screenshot of the failing test that we have in CI, which is, again, really, really helpful just to be able to see what has been going on. What is more, inside of the videos folder, we actually have a video recording of the tests going live and happening so that we can check what the tests have been doing even though they are being run in a simulated environment. And we can see that this one has failed and those are just fine. All right. How does Cypress actually make money? They provide the special dashboard complementary companion application, which is used to get extensive testing insights. It's primarily targeting enterprise customers since it's a paid solution. but it gives the capability of all the tests that we have to be run in parallel or to be even load balanced. And it is really easy to integrate with all sorts of CI providers such as Circle CI and so on. But once again, this is a complementary service, and it even has a free tier. A few trade-offs, since nothing is perfect. Cypress is best at end-to-end testing. I'm not saying that you can't write unit and integration tests, but just the strong suit of Cypress is end-to-end. Cypress will be using JavaScript now and forever because simply it's running in the browser, whether you like it or not. Cypress has been having issues when it comes to multiple tab testing and pop-up testing, just because it is running in a simulated browser environment, in a single tab in there. And the browser support was kind of a trade-off. It's not that much of a trade-off anymore, just because the browser support has been growing, and the only notable omission right now is Safari. So what I can say is just try Cypress. Give it a day, give it half a day. It's really easy to start writing even complex end-to-end scenarios. Just write a few smoke tests, cover your basics, and just make sure that your application is running as it should. You can cover a lot of stuff with just a few end-to-end tests, and we at Accedia have been having a great development experience and a QA experience with Cypress so far. So I really encourage you to just give it a go. With that being said, I'd like to thank you for listening to me ranting for the past 20 minutes or so, and I'd like to thank the ISTA 2020 organizers. So thank you once again. It has been a great pleasure for me to be here today. If you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to have a chat with you guys about it. Thank you.